think it's time for another horror icon profile. This time, John Carpenter. John Carpenter is probably one of the greatest horror directors, horror cinema, and the history of cinema. He's made plenty of notable pieces of work. But let's dig into a little bit about John Carpenter. John Howard Carpenter, born January 16, 1948, born in a small town of upstate New York. His father, Howard, was a music composer, but keep that in mind in the future. At a young age, growing up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, Carpenter was interested in cinema, mainly like the Western, but also the low-budget horror films piqued his interest. His favorite was the 1951 Things from a Different World, and the other was a actually higher budget film called Forbidden Planet, more of a science fiction film. In high school, Carpenter started his own short horror film, actually before high school. But he was attending to Western Kentucky University, where his father was a music composer at, but he ended up going to USC Cinematic Film School, but dropped out early. He dropped out to create his own thing. But before he dropped out of USC, he wrote and directed an 8mm film called Captain Voyeur that was actually discovered in 2011. And it was said that many elements of that film will be adapted into Halloween. Now, he wrote some other short story films, a full-length film that would be called Dog Star in 1974, a science fiction comedy, a film which he actually did the musical score for. There'll be a lot more of that. In 1976, he directed the famed film Assault on Precinct 13, a film he scored, edited, and wrote the script for. He had all hands on deck. The budget was at $100,000, and the film wasn't praised when released. It had mixed reviews and a low box office return, but since 1976, many praised the film. Actually, I gotta finish watching it. I ain't finished watching it. I fell asleep on that. Don't watch a movie when he's sleepy. In 2 years' time, we would see the release of Halloween. Carpenter's, I would say his official intro, but his intro into the horror film. And you guys don't know how much I actually love Halloween. And of course, it's Michael Myers' best outing in film. I don't know what the hell they doing now with Halloween, but we ain't gonna talk about that right now. Halloween you know what? I'll talk about Halloween in a different video. But Carpenter did score the music for the film. Probably one of the best scores. Probably one of the best film scores. Still being remixed today. But before the release of Halloween, Carpenter had directed a film called The Eyes of Laura Mars, a thriller, in his official big budget film released in 1978. It starred Faye Dunaway and Tommy Lee Jones. It was actually Carpenter's. It wasn't his film. He wrote the screenplay and had the initial script written years before, but it was actually Irvin Kershner who directed the film. Irvin Kershner, best known for directing one of my favorite films, Empire Strikes Back. It wasn't George Lucas, but he did produce the script for Empire Strikes Back. But we ain't gonna talk about Star Wars right now. After Halloween and the start of the 1980s, Carpenter would continue to move forward with the horror genre and began starting collaborations with Jamie Lee Curtis, who was in Halloween and The Fog, but he did more films with Kurt Russell, several films. In 1981, which is not really a horror film, but Escape from New York with Kurt Russell, The Thing in 1982 with Kurt Russell. Carpenter did not film Halloween 2, but did write the film along with Deborah Hill, who, helped write Halloween, The Fog, Escape from New York, Escape from LA. Hill and Carpenter met in 1975 on a set of Assault on Precinct 13, as she was script supervisor and editor assistant. The relationship went beyond filmmaking, but a personal relationship as friends. Carpenter supported her push for more women to become directors, as Hill continued to produce until her death in 2005, her last works being The Fog remake and World Trade Center. Carpenter called her one of the greatest experiences of his life and had a passion for not just movies about women or women ideals, but films for everybody. Hey, Hollywood. Now, your writers out there now, you can learn something from that, you know. Anyways, in 1983, John Carpenter directed the supernatural horror film Christine, a film based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, a film about a car that has its own personality and homicidal. That's the best way to describe it than the worst way. The film has become a cult classic. I gotta say cult classic. Cult classic. As the 80s continue on, he had another big budget film in Big Trouble in Little China, a favorite of mine. But it didn't go well in the box office reports, but since has become a favorite among the people. After that film, Carpenter went back to kind of create low budget films, such as The Prince of Darkness, and another favorite of mine, They Live in 1988, but he never really gained that commercial success like he previously did with films before. In 1990, this is important, Carpenter married his second wife, Sandy King, a film producer experienced in making animated TV shows, and businesswoman who was and is the founder of Storm King Productions and Storm King Comics. With Carpenter, she helped create the comic book series Asylum, which is based on horror, of course. She also helped produce various Carpenter films like The Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned, Vampires, and Ghost on Mars. Not to forget his first wife, Adrienne Barbeau, who was influential to Carpenter's career, starting in films like The Fog, Escape from New York, and The Thing, even having a son with Carpenter, Cody, who would follow in his father's footsteps in the musician direction. By the 1990s, Carpenter's commercial success started to decline with various horror films such as The Vampire, In the Mouth of Madness, an ode to Lovecraftian horror, Body Bags, another favorite of mine. It's not a horror film, but it adds to Carpenter's mystique as a director. Escape from LA, once again starring Kurt Russell, and Village of the Damned in 1995. In 2001, Carpenter directed Ghost of Mars, starring Jason Statham and Ice Cube, a film that did poorly at the box office, but since then has gained a more positive light and cult following. But due to some of these commercial failures, Carpenter retired from directing, but did have some minor involvement with the remix of The Fog and Assault on Precinct 13. In 2010, he would return to directing with the release of The Ward, a supernatural horror set in 1966 about a young woman who was institutionalized after setting her house on fire and being hunted by a ghost of an inmate. The film stars Amber Heard, The film didn't do well at the box office, only earning $5 million against a $10 million budget, and that film will probably be the last for Carpenter like that. Now, as of recently, Carpenter has narrated for video games such as Fear 3, earned a Lifetime Award from the Freak Show Horror Film Festival, released multiple albums. In 2018, he returned as producer and composer for Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. Yeah, he's probably the best part of these three films. Yeah, making his return to the series since 1982. Halloween season 3. I said Halloween. In 2008, he returned as a producer and composer for Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. Yeah, he's probably the best part of those three films. Sucky-ass films. But this was his return to the series since 1982's Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch, which he helped produce but not direct. In addition to his directing and composing, he also has acting credits in many of his own films. Most of them uncredited though. Examples being, let's say, Halloween, The Fog, The Thing, Body Bags, They Live as a Voice, and recently Studio 666 in 2022. Carpenter is genius. He is. He's a genius. He has been a favorite of mine. The way he films his films with that minimal lighting, which kind of was missing. I'm not gonna go there. With the minimal lighting, it adds to the scare factor of his films like Halloween or even Escape from LA or New York. The work he puts into his music with the synthesized scores adds to the scare factor, most notably like films like Halloween and Prince of Darkness. His characters, you always root for them, and the enemies such as Michael Myers has been cemented in horror cinema as one of the best horror icons of all time. Yes, Michael Myers is one of the best horror villains of all time. I said it. Too bad. No, I'm not even gonna go there. He's slightly above Dracula, Freddy Krueger, Jason, Pennywise, even Jaws, aka Bruce the Shark. Myers is simplistic. A jump shoot, a mask, a knife. Now, the films he's been in, that's another story where I will not go into. But with all those horror icons I named, some of those horror icons that have such great elements too, you know? Carpenter's influence has spread across Hollywood directors such as James Cameron, James Wan, Quentin Tarantino, and even Hans Zimmer, music-wise. Well, I could say it sucks that Carpenter's later films never made the money at the box office, but those films did what they're supposed to do. Entertain the viewers to the point we can continue to keep watching these films over and over again with enthusiasm. I can tell you how many times I've seen Halloween and Big Trouble in Little China. As far as John Carpenter is concerned, none of that matters, as long as he's gaining a cult following. With all these films, I had to put Carpenter in the realms of one of the best directors of cinema and horror cinema, but you just gotta give the props to the man.